I was in the best shape of my life, winning races, every session felt effortless, and that's exactly when I got injured and lost almost a year of running. This happened to me twice, and after working with over 1,000 runners as a physiotherapist and coach, I can tell you that it wasn't bad luck. There are predictable mistakes that take runners out, the same ones again and again, and most people learn them way too late. Even I for sure need to be reminded of these 7 things I will talk about today as often as possible. You can relatively quickly improve your base fitness in your cardiovascular system. After just a few weeks of consistent good training stimuli, you start to be able to run faster on the same heart rate. Paces that used to feel hard start to feel easy, and that feeling is incredible, and it gives you such a great mental boost and momentum. But there is a problem, and this is really important, so stay with me here. Your tendons and bones and your connective tissue adapt through slower structural changes. So while your cardiovascular system has already adapted and is basically cheering you on, saying, yeah, let's run faster, let's do more training, your tissues are still in many cases not ready to increase paces and volume in your training yet. So what many runners miss is that one of the most dangerous periods is actually when everything feels amazing and you had a great progress. I experienced this myself at the worst possible times. During my years as an elite orienteering runner, I had 2 major injuries that took me out for a really long time. And both of them came right after I was in the absolute best shape of my life. I was winning races, training had gone incredibly, and every session simply felt great. And that is exactly when you get hungry, you feel so good and you're so hyped about the recent development that you want to take the next step as soon as possible as well. So you add more volume and you start running faster on all runs at the same time without even noticing it, since you're in such a good shape at the moment. And then all of a sudden something gives out. Maybe an Achilles, maybe a bone, something that was slowly breaking down in the background while your cardiovascular system was feeling completely fine. Both of the times that this happened to me, it took me years getting back to anywhere near the same shape as I was before the injuries. So years of development lost on not playing it just a little bit safer in the right moments. And I look back now and think, what if someone had just told me things are going really well now? That's great, that means we keep what is working for a while. As long as we see development, we don't need to rush to add more. Not yet, we let everything in the body catch up, adapt to this new fitness level before we take another step in the training. And when we do, we take it one step at a time and do not increase both the training volume and the intensity at the same time. That is exactly how I nowadays try to guide my athletes, because being overeager for 1 or 2 weeks can genuinely cost you years of continuous development. And this is of course a lot easier to say in retrospect now, looking back at my career, than getting it right in the moment. But the next time everything feels amazing in your training for a period, that is your cue to be a little bit careful and not add too much too soon. And one thing that many tend to get completely wrong, especially when things are going well, is the crucial easy running between the harder workouts. A lot of runners tend to feel that they have only trained if the session was hard, and there is a version of that mindset that makes sense. Hard workouts lead to rapid short-term improvement. But taken too far, it leads to something really damaging for the long term. Because here is what actually happens when you run easy. You build the kind of consistency that compounds over months and years. You let your body absorb the harder sessions. And easy running is not the filler between the real training. It is a huge part of building your durability and your base aerobic engine. So yes, if you have very little time and want short-term results, maybe in a tapering period before a shorter race, doing more high-intensity work makes sense, and it works. But if you're thinking about what keeps you running and keeps you enjoying running and keeps you improving over years, a lot of easy running is the answer. This is probably one of the biggest mindset shift that most runners need to make. Running is not about proving yourself in every single session and every single day. It's about creating a stimulus that your body can recover from, adapt to, and are repeatable week after week. If every run becomes too hard, your training becomes really hard to sustain, both from a physiological and a psychological standpoint. And sustainability is everything in the sport of running. I see too many runners chasing fast average paces to post on their Strava. A lot of people seem to be embarrassed if the runs didn't hit that or this average pace. But if you want kudos from me as a coach and physio, you should run your slow runs at an easy, comfortable pace, where you should be able to have a full conversation without any problem. Now we need to talk about a topic that is blowing up on the internet, that feels like it should make you better quickly without any real effort, but can actually backfire a lot if you're not careful. There's a certain type of running content that always seems to blow up and go viral on social media, where someone breaks down running form and talks about foot strike, cadence, arm swing, and tells you that if you just fix this one thing, everything changes. I've seen so many of these videos get millions of views, and I understand why, because if you can run faster with less effort and less injuries from just changing your arm swing or position, or your foot striking pattern, that would be great. And all of us humans love quick fixes that are low effort. I mean, that's easier to just do this than to start training a lot more. But here is what I want more runners to understand, that the search for one universal answer to running form is not just oversimplified on social media, but running form advice like that can cause some serious injuries to runners. Because here's the main context that is missing from all of those short form viral videos. That is that we all have different bone structures, different hip angles, different flexibility, different body proportions. And that means that a stride that looks perfect on someone on Instagram for someone else that is not you might be completely wrong for you and your body composition. And a stride that looks a little bit awkward and maybe it's not the most pretty thing to look at might be extremely efficient for you. So what is optimal for one body will simply not be optimal for another one. There's actually a really interesting study done on this, where researchers measured the actual running economy of 5 runners, simply measuring how effective their stride is at a given pace, properly measured in the lab. And then they also filmed the runners, and after that they asked 121 experienced distance running coaches to rank them from the most to the least economical running stride, just by watching the video. And the coaches were basically not able to do it accurately. And the study was literally designed to test the ability of coaches to rank order distance runners on running economy through visual assessment. So if even experienced running coaches struggle to see what is good and bad form from a running economy perspective, just from looking at someone, we should probably be a bit humble before telling every runner on the internet to do this change or completely rebuild their whole running stride, because it might actually harm a lot of runners. And this is something that I'm quite passionate about as a physio, because I watched this play out in real time during the Born to Run era. When that book came out, minimalist shoes became a huge thing, and suddenly everyone was switching from heel striking to forefoot striking almost overnight. And working at a sports physio clinic during that period, I have never seen so many serious calf and Achilles injuries in my whole life. Because what those runners were doing was rapidly shifting the load onto tissues that had never had to handle that kind of continuous load before. And again, those kind of tissues need months, sometimes over a year to adapt. And the increased load need to be gradual for them to not break down. So for some of these runners, a very gradual transition might have actually been beneficial, especially if they had a history of knee problems, because what we have seen in studies is that forefoot striking tends to shift the load more from the knee more to the Achilles and calf. But the speed of the change is what broke these runners. So here is my honest take. If you're currently running injury-free, your running form might actually be pretty good for you, no matter what someone online says about about your foot strike or your cadence or your arm position. But if you have specific recurring injuries that might have something to do with your running technique or want to work on your technique for other reasons, the key is to make changes very slowly and gradually. Small adjustments over weeks and months, not a complete overhaul of how you run in one single session. Now let's talk about one of the most underrated problems in modern running. We have more data than ever, but more data does not always mean better decisions. I think this point is really important in this day and age. We now have more running data than ever before from watches like this, the Pace 4 from the sponsor of this video, Coros. We get pace, heart rate, training load, recovery, sleep, HRV and more. And I love geeking out on all of this data you get, and you can for sure learn a lot from it. But one mistake I see a lot of runners make is that they only look at the numbers. Because as a physiotherapist, I think we need to be careful here. The human body is so complex, and no matter how good these watches get, the data they automatically record won't give you the whole picture. Your training load can look fine, but maybe your calf felt a little bit off in the warm-up, maybe you felt tired from a lot of general life stress, maybe the run just felt a lot harder than it should have had. And all of that is extremely important data too. Data that most runners never log anywhere, even though it's often the most telling information about how your whole complex human body system is actually responding to the training. And that's why I really like the voice training notes that Coros has added to their new watches. After you finish a workout, you just press the action button and record a voice note directly into the watch. Felt easy and controlled. The Achilles felt better than yesterday, just a bit sore in the beginning. You can also log your perceived exertion right there. So straight after a run, while everything is fresh, you can capture how it actually felt directly into the watch, and it gets automatically transcribed and stored right alongside all of your other activity metrics in the Coros app. And this is honestly the most frictionless way I've seen to log this kind of subjective data. And as a physio and coach, I would love if every runner just spent 20 seconds doing this after every single run. So thanks to Coros for continuing to build products and features that are actually useful for us runners. This is probably the thing that most runners learn the latest, and it costs them the most. Pain is not always a disaster. It is a natural part of being a human, and especially as a runner, that you feel some pain here and there now and then. It's completely normal. But what is important is that those pain signals are always an information point. And the mistake is not having some small pains here and there. The mistake is ignoring the important patterns. If something hurts a little once and then disappears, that's fine and normal and shouldn't bring you into full panic mode and take a full week rest completely off running. But if the same niggle is there 3 runs in a row, and if it's slowly getting a little bit worse and worse each time, your body is sending you a message. And what I've seen from working with so many athletes at this point is that the runners who learn to read those kind of messages correctly and actually respond to them are the ones who stay injury-free year after year and keep developing. If an overuse injury builds up like that, gradually getting worse, the good thing is that you get the chance to correct and take some days off, do some cross-training before it becomes a full injury. That will take you months to recover from. But the sad thing is that many obvious injuries actually appear pretty suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, to be a full-blown injury, and those are of course a lot harder to catch. But also these can be avoided through smart decisions. Now I know that a lot of runners, when I speak about topics like this, think that okay, I just need to do some more strength and prehab exercises and I'll be protected. And in my next point I want to address that directly, because the answer is a bit more complicated than that. Okay, so I want to be really honest about this topic here, because there's a lot of hype around it, and I honestly think it creates sort of a false sense of security for some runners. Strength training can absolutely be very useful, especially if you have recurring specific issues, and of course for general health. Strength training it's great, and it has even been shown in studies that it can help you improve your running economy. But the studies linking strength training to fewer injury problems in runners are actually not as strong as many people think. A systematic review from 2024 looked at the exercise-based injury prevention programs in endurance runners, including 1,904 runners across 9 different studies. And overall, they found no significant reduction in injury risk or injury rate compared to runners who just continued running. And their conclusion was pretty direct. Exercise-based interventions do not appear to reduce the risk and rate of running-related injuries. Now, this does not mean that strength training is completely useless. Actually, supervised programs did seem more promising from that review, probably because runners actually did the exercises properly and consistently. But strength training is not a magic shield that will save you from all injuries. And honestly, I think a lot of colleagues of mine overvalue this because physios and rehab experts are more trained in different complex strength exercises, and it makes them feel more valuable and like they have the solution, compared to focusing even more on what is actually where you make the main difference, which is what I will cover in my next and last point. And this part is what nobody wants to hear. Maybe that's not what you want the last point of a long video like this to start with. But hear me out, because I think this is the most important thing I can leave you with. Because the real main answer to staying injury-free is not exciting. It is not a special shoe, it's not a fancy recovery gadget, it's not changing your running form because a dude on Instagram told you to. It is not a complex treatment you get at a clinic or some secret special strength exercise. Even though the internet and honestly a lot of people in my own profession will keep trying to tell you those things. The real answer is boring. Managing your training load with consistent training, slow patient progression, enough easy running, avoid the big load spikes, and of course good sleep and enough good food. I know that sounds simple, but simple is not the same as easy, because the hardest thing is actually getting the basics right, especially when you're feeling great and want to push more, or when life gets busy and those good habits start slipping. I felt that this recently myself. The last few months have been filled with one injury problem after another, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I knew what I was doing wrong, but I just convinced myself that I could get away with it somehow, and that the rules didn't apply to me. They did, and they always do, and I paid for it. I simply tried to rush training in a period that was filled with life stress, bad sleep, and bad running consistency because of sickness. So I'm not saying any of this from someplace above you, I'm saying it from the exact same place as you and as any runner, because knowing what to do is one thing. Implementing systems in your life to actually do the right things in the right moments in your training is the hard part. But let's agree, you and me now, to actually commit to the fundamentals. No crazy hero load spike sessions, no ignoring warning signals, just solid, honest, repeatable training week after week. It might sound boring, sorry that I couldn't sell you an easy, fancy, quick fix, but doing the basics and boring stuff right is what lets you keep running for years. And when you keep running for years, that is where you get to enjoy everything amazing running comes with the most. Thanks again to Coros for sponsoring this video. If you want to check out all of their products, you can click here. Train smart, have fun, and I will see you in the next video.